We have been working for a few years, and most recently we had our NEASC assessment a year ago, and then we had a Cambridge review, both which talked about the comprehensiveness of our high school and those areas of excellence that we have within the school, and we were given accommodations for. They also talked about areas that we needed improvement in terms of our organization, curriculum, our alignment, our access, our equity. There were many things in there that we had to look at in terms of making us a comprehensive high school that was not only challenging to our most highest achieving students, but those that may take a little more time and make sure they have access and equity as well. So with that, we began looking at it. As you know, we changed leadership last year, and Dr. Rossi, who has been a national trainer in secondary ed, has spent some time looking at the reports and then the activities that we've had at the high school. With that, he has put together a plan that's been part of the plan and the dream of this board in terms of looking at our high school, which is about, some days it's 3,000, some days it's 3,100, on snow days about 1,800, on half days and what have you. But in terms of looking at making it a little more personal and looking at a transitional time for freshmen in particular as they transition into the high school, that they're able to not only navigate it, but become familiar with the curriculum expectations of teachers in terms of a different mode of teaching. And that we talked about possibly a school within the school that we call a freshman school. Now, Danbury had started something a few years ago with clusters, so it had the beginnings of that. So we looked at that. We also looked at the beginnings of the advisory program. And the lens that we're looking at, and Bob's going to talk about, is really the gestalt of all of the coursework, all of the activities that will begin with transition for freshmen, making their time in the high school a good transition period with leadership and those that are dedicated working with freshmen as they transition up to the upper school or 10, 11, and 12. And the coursework that's going to take place in the freshman school, in addition to the coursework within the departments, being something that he will speak about tonight, that will give us the access for all students. There's been a lot out there about eliminating tracks and eliminating honors. I got to tell you, I was with the state commissioner last week, and they put out an edict to all of the districts and the secondary districts that the multi-tracking levels within the districts is something that the State Board of Education has taken on. It's something that's asking the 15 districts that they are running. And I remind this board, you don't really run this board. The Board of Ed runs by the State Board of Education in virtue of us not making our daily progress, although they've accepted our plan, which is good. But he had indicated, I told him that we were having this conversation. Meriden, Stanford, Waterbury, a number of other schools also have had to go what we call a D-track. And it's maintaining the integrity of courses and raising the bar for everyone. And of course, that's what we want for all kids. Making sure that we have time. Some kids need more time based on IEPs and other things, and we will make sure those courses are there. So we're looking at refining what we have, not eliminating all things, but making it accessible and equitable for all students. And it's something the State Board is taking very seriously and looking at Danbury and the other districts in terms of how we're handling it. With that, I'm not going to take any more time and ask Dr. Rossi and his team to come up here. He can introduce everyone and begin talking about these ideas. Dr. Rossi, we're going to move around, Bob, so that we can view this.
Yeah, that might be helpful because obviously it's going to be right there.
I'm sorry?
This is half the front slide.
Yes.
Just a minute. This is a board workshop, and a board workshop operates differently than boards. This is for this board to look at the material, whatever it happens to be, and then have conversation. It then may be open to the public. It really is not a regular meeting where we get up and there's conversation. This evening at the end, they will ask you. You'll have enough fun to get it. And if not tonight, next Wednesday night, you're here every Wednesday night, is a regular board meeting, and it'll be time to do it as well. If you don't feel as though it's regular, the next.
Board. I just want to take this opportunity first to thank you very much for having a special work session to look at this work. The first time I looked at this data was almost a year ago when I was preparing for this job and becoming familiar with Danbury High School. And it is really an honor to work with such people that really take such pride and energy and are so educated in what's going on in our school. I think that some of the information that I'm going to share with you tonight, you're going to say, yeah, I knew that about our school, and I read the Cambridge report, and I read the TDAC plan, and I know that we've got to work in that area. I think that some of the other information I'm going to share with you, you're going to go, I didn't really know that, and let's talk more about that. But I do want to say that...
for everyone's benefit, I think we should do that.
I do want to say that from the get-go, the first time I stepped foot on Danbury High School, in fact, prior to even coming to Danbury High School, Sal and Gary and Jesse Ballinger visited my former school and made me feel very comfortable in this new challenge. And when we sat around the table and looked at the data very deeply, and you're going to see tonight hundreds and hundreds of hours of work with almost 50 different people on our campus. Some of the members of the school data team are here that work diligently on this plan. So it's not the Bob remodel or the Megan or the Tim remodel. It's the redesigned phase one of Danbury with about 50 different sets of eyes looking at this plan. And I just want to thank, first of all, Gary Boccaccio, Mike Clark, Jesse Ballinger, Kim Salem, and when you knew her, she was Megan Martins, and now she got a lot smarter since working at Danbury. She's Dr. Megan Martins. For really their teamwork and their collaboration and their cooperation and just really forcing forward this movement. And I will show you that when you look at the folks on our team, tonight I'm going to share with you three main ideas. The three big picture ideas are what's going on with the curriculum and instruction at Danbury High School, and that's really Megan's forte, and that's what Megan's going to talk to. What's going on with the Freshman Academy? You heard Sal talk about this freshman experience, and Tim Salem has been championing that project. There's another thing called open enrollment. What's going on with our advanced placement classes, and what are we going to do with that? And then the third big idea is I'm going to ask you as board members to take a look at what we ask students of Danbury High School to graduate with. What kind of skills, what kind of coursework do you want them to graduate with? Because when we look at what we ask our kids to graduate with versus what the rest of the state is asking kids to graduate with, and what the state is saying is happening in a year or two, you'll find that it's very different. So, can I just have the members of the school data team that are here please stand? All of our assistant principals are on one of the subcommittees. Thank you. So you can see some of these slides, and we're going to put a lot of information at you. And the reason I gave you the PowerPoint in that handout is I was hoping that you would write questions in the note column. When the presentation is over, I can direct those questions to either myself, Megan, Tim, or any one of the assistant principals or folks that serve on those data teams to kind of address it specifically. But you can see we have, I think the grand total is 47 people from every department represented in these conversations. Some of them went rather smoothly, some of them didn't go quite so smoothly. It was very, very hard work, and it's not over yet, and it's work that has to be done. I think all of us in this room know it has to be done, and I couldn't do it without all of them, obviously. I just want to start, give you a brief background statement, and understand, I think all of us need to understand that schools in our country are going in one of two directions. And if we think our school is, okay and just kind of holding the ground, then the reality is we're going behind, because schools should be in this constant improvement phase. And education in our world right now is very different than it has ever been. We live in one of accountability. If we didn't live in the world of accountability, I wouldn't be standing before our school board saying, this is what I feel strongly about for our high school redesign. And that we know more about teaching and learning in the last 20 years than we have in the previous 100. More has been written, there's been more research, and there's been more work done around our country. This was recently written in a position paper. You can see how recent it was, a couple of weeks ago. All students, equal access, excellent educators, regardless. I think it's very clear, this is what the research says, in no particular order is going on at the very best secondary schools in our country. If we were reflected at Danbury, we could say that we do some of these very well. Some of these we have some areas to work on. I think of all of the slides I show you this evening, this is the one that probably bears the most challenges and is the largest shift in the way we think about schools. Schools, and this is critical in everything we've done from the first time I met with the school data team, I said to them, be a hero. The work that we're about to do is heroic work. It's important that we take a risk, and we must think about building a school about what's best for students. When I ask the question at Danbury, why do we do things? I often would get the answer, because we always do them that way. They've always been done that way. When that question is asked, why do we do things, the answer that always has to be is because it's what's best for our kids. So when we take a first-year teacher and give them our most challenging students, that's really not what's best for kids. Those kind of really tough decisions are part of the entire redesign. Then we look at all students, all gaps, and opportunities for all kids. That there isn't this exclusive environment for certain courses, that it's an inclusive environment for courses. That we absolutely provide a viable and guaranteed curriculum. I told my staff that my entry plan was to sit down with each one of them for 30 minutes and get to know them one-on-one. And they looked at me like I was crazy. And they looked at me like, well, you know how large the staff is. And I said, you know what I'm going to do if I win a break? Well, sure you are. I'm through 145 of them. But those 145 interviews have lended some fantastic information. The main thing that's lended is that bullet number 3 presently does not exist at Danbury High School. And that is really scary. And that's the work that Megan is so fantastic at. That English 2 needs to be the same course in every classroom taught at Danbury High School. That this is the guaranteed curriculum. And no student can enter a junior English class at Danbury and say to a teacher, oh, we've already read this book last year. Because there'll be a guaranteed curriculum. That is critical in this process. That all of the decisions that we make as a leadership team, as a school data team at our high school, are based on 3 things: research, data, experience, and knowledge. It's been going on in our country. We've done it before. We know it works. We have the data to prove it. And the hardest part of all of this is the last bullet. And I probably should have capitalized the word all in the last bullet, because, as I mentioned to you, I want to give the school board homework tonight. And part of the homework is really, let's look at our graduation requirements. We must elevate the professional practice for everybody in this room. If all of the students at Danbury High School, if Danbury High School is going to change, If the gaps are going to narrow, the practice starts with everyone, not just certain teachers, not just beginning teachers, not just with building principal, but with everybody in the school community. So as we go through this process, as I said, this is probably the most important slide. It carries the most weight. It's the philosophy and the background for all of the work we've done here. Okay, tonight we're going to share some successes. You're going to see some challenges. And then we're going to mainly focus on what's next. Okay? We know that there's some great things that are going on at our high school. We're going to share them with you. I've already mentioned the challenges. It's no surprise that we're focusing on 3 main areas and your main area. And then the board's consideration is the graduation requirements. Okay? I think everybody knows this about our school. It's one of the most phenomenal places. In any school I've been in a lot of high schools in our country. It is literally the melting pot, I think, of our nation. I love going into the cafeteria in the morning before school and just seeing the tremendous diversity in our school. We have a total of 48 languages spoken, and as you can see, 25% of our faculty served on the Outcome Achievement Plan. This is what Cambridge said about Danbury. Respectful, welcoming, conducive to learning. Extensive extracurricular opportunities. And they commented about the implementation of a student advisory program. And I'd like to think that our advisory program is in a better place this year than it was last year. And that is really because of the work that Gary and Mike and Jesse and Tim and Dan Donovan, who's now serving as our athletic director, have done through the years. The school, when you say you work at high school and there's 3,000 teenagers, people, tremble when you say that in people outside of education. The school runs remarkably well because of the leadership team at Danbury and the teachers stepping up and taking a role in that process. Here's some of the data. Now, we are in orange, the state is in blue, and you can see that we have not met the state averages when testing students during their sophomore year in math. In fact, the only subgroup, interestingly enough, the only subgroup that is exceeding the state average at Danbury High School are our black students. And the gap for our white students is the broadest. The picture is the same in grade. Almost identical. Right now, for this school year, we have 1,871 students that are in study hall for at least one period during the day. This is a huge challenge for us. 1,871 teenagers for 45 minutes in a study hall. Now, part of our redesign is the detracking of our high school, the elimination of some tracks. The result of that will be that number 47 going down considerably. Let me explain to you what that number 47 means. Right now we have 47 classes at Danbury High School that are offered one time and one time only. So if you want to take a class called Crafts, that's great. You can sign up for it. 23 students have signed up for it, but it's only offered one period, second semester. Now what that does is it has this squeezing effect of the master schedule, and it pigeonholes kids. The same is true for all of our tracked courses. We have have certain courses that are considered level 2 courses, level 3 courses, level 4 courses. The specialization of those courses and the idea that we offer 47 of them only once has really squeezed out lots of kids from classes, and the effect of that is they're in study halls. They're not taking courses at our high school. The only thing we can do, or we have them from 7:20 to 2 o'clock. That's the time that we can all control them. And it's a travesty that for 45 minutes of that very short time, and of course in Connecticut we have this thing called late starts and delays, and we didn't have those in Arizona. So we lose an hour and a half of that time. They're sitting in the study hall. That's something that we really, really want to look at and really get that number way down for next year. And another challenge is that our current graduation requirements do not ensure that all students are prepared for college or for post-secondary schooling. This is some very, very interesting data, and it's interesting to me because I guess I like data, but it is what has happened to a lot of our kids at our school. Now, this is data that is pulled from what we would consider right now level 2 courses. These are courses at our high school that are offered less than high school level credit. They don't get the same grade point average as a regular course. So we have this course called Freshman English, which everybody takes, but then we offer level 2. Now, let's look at what happens to those courses and the kids, more importantly, that are in those courses. First of all, about 10% of all of the courses that we offer at our school are offered at this level, 77 to be exact. 77 times during the school day, we offer courses below high school level credit. Okay, in those courses, 68% of these students are minority. So that is not reflective of the population in Danbury. This is a very, very interesting fact. This is a very telling statistic. Of all of the kids in those courses, 95% of them have a grade point average of less than an 8. So when I say to you, once you're taking a level 2 course or a level 2 track, it's almost like you are destined to this lesser of an education at our school. 60% of the kids in those courses are males, and the failure rate in those courses is much higher than other courses. Now, when you talk to teachers about those courses and kids in those courses, they would say that they're teaching to the level of the kid. And those kids, some of the teachers would say those kids need that lower level course. And then, of course, the argument would be, if you're teaching to the level of those kids, then shouldn't the grade distribution of those courses be very similar to the grade distribution of the rest of the courses at our school? They're not. They fail those courses much higher. In some of those courses, we don't have curriculum, we don't have resources, and many times we've taken a first or second year teacher and given those courses. And that one bullet we talked about is doing what's best for our kids. Bullet number 1, all decisions based on what's best for our kids. That's not what's best for our kids. That's a lot of level 2 data, very, very condensed. Tim Salem is going to talk to you about the Freshman Academy. When we look at the data for freshmen, we understand how difficult it is a transition from middle school to high school. From middle school to high school size of Danbury, even more difficult. Well, you can see that our freshmen have a difficult time with this transition. Probably no surprise to anybody in this room. Almost 50% of them have at least one F. A quarter of them have have more than one F. Okay? Our English language learners are 37% of them fail to become sophomores after 1 year. 41% of freshmen, or excuse me, have suspensions with freshmen. They just don't get how to behave and how to learn at a high school the size of ours. And the interesting thing about the tracking paradigm is when you talk to teachers about how kids can move through tracks, they will say to you, wow, kids can go up tracks. So even though someone starts at level 2, they can go to level 3 or level 4 or level 5 class. But when you analyze the schedule changes from a year ago, twice as many students started here and went here. So I have been talking about the concept of leveling up. Nobody rises to lower expectations. We all rise to higher expectations. We are practicing the practice of leveling down at Danbury, and that practice has to stop. This is the AP enrollment. The pie graph on the left is the population of Danbury High School. Pie graph on the right is color-coded the same way, and it represents our advanced placement 11. And you can see that they are not the same. In a perfect world, I should be able to lay these graphs over each other, and they should be similar. Here's the data of our AP enrollment. Less than 10% of the students at our high school right now are taking AP classes. Only 6.4% of our minority students are taking AP classes. We have about 2% of our students that are in a UConn program. Now here's the interesting dynamic. 76% of our kids go on to post-secondary education. 76%. That's a great number. Less than 10% of them are taking a college level course at Danbury. 40% of them go to the university right down the street, WestConn, and don't qualify to take English 101. This is where we need huge curriculum work. If we're going to save this community, 76% of them are going on to college, then you know what? It is our duty to get 76% of them prepared. It's actually our duty to get 100% of them prepared. And what the other students do, that's their call. But 76% of them are going, and they're not all prepared to go there. 10% of them are very prepared. The kids that we introduced this evening are going to continue to put Danbury on the map. So remember, it's all kids, all gals. This is what we talk about when we talk about academic rigor. Solid academic core, finishing math beyond Algebra 2. If I said something to the school board right now, it might shock you. I think, Irving, I think we talked about this once when you were at a concert at school, that right now you can graduate from Danbury High School and never take high school algebra. Never take it. Right now. High school algebra in most schools in our country is an entry-level high school math course. That's where I need your help. That's where we have a group of people that have worked on graduation requirements. I'd love for the board to go into a study session and let's look at the graduation requirements and what we're asking from our kids to get a diploma. It's very different than what we should be asking our kids. Okay, and there's tons and tons and tons of research that says just mere exposure to an AP course as a high school student tremendously increases my success in college. So that 9.7 number that I showed you back here, excuse me, right there, we're hoping that next time we do this report, that there's 20% of our students in just a year's time exposed to that. And next week you're going to hear a program called Project Opening Doors. I spoke to it probably a month or so ago at our board meeting about the change, the shift in philosophy. Megan,
Do you want it working here?
Yeah, no, I'm okay.
I'm going to turn this over to Megan at this point, who's been intimately involved with this from the get-go.
Thank you, Bob. Good evening. I first was introduced to Danbury when I was a consultant with the State Department of Education, so I'm very familiar with the TDEC plan. I worked with a wonderful group of people to help facilitate the development of that plan. And we included this slide in our presentation just sort of to frame the actions that we're taking in our Outcome Achievement Plan in terms of the work that you set forth before Bob and I ever entered Danbury High School. And really, these 5 goals really speak directly to the work that you've been clear in terms of expecting us to do. So the first is presenting a revised sequence of courses that reflect increased rigor, and so that we'll speak a little bit about with regards to the tracking efforts. All staff implementing research-based planning, looking at expanding the 9th grade teams, and again, Tim Sam will talk more about that. Looking at a program of studies really for English language learners and ensuring that there are equitable opportunities for all of our students, and implementing common formative assessments and data teams. And so these are really the 5 pieces that we took in terms of our marching orders to work on improving Danbury High School. So we've framed this in terms of what's currently underway and work that we have to undertake in the future. We have implemented instructional data teams, and we have common course teachers working together during their department meeting times to analyze common assessment data to try and bring parity between courses, again, to ensure equity for all students. As Bob indicated, we've established a school data team. There was an open invitation for all faculty to participate in that, and we had an overwhelmingly positive response with a large number of our faculty that represent all of the departments as well as guidance. They're participating and working incredibly hard. I'd just like to echo Bob's thanks for that group. With the 50 people, we've managed to do quite a bit of work. And in my past life in the State Department, I did a lot of work with school data teams, instructional data teams, and I can really, objectively is the right word at this point, say that they've just done an outstanding job. And we meet monthly for several hours. A lot of interim work goes on. So again, I'd like to reiterate that this is really the good thinking of a large percentage of the faculty at Danbury High School. We're looking at standardizing grading policies and midterm and final exams. Some of the departments were in better shape than others. Bob talked about English. The English 2 final exam should be the same irrespective of the teacher that you have. Classrooms should not be a lottery. And the work on curriculum and ensuring that grading practices are standardized is something that we have a subcommittee of this curriculum instruction and assessment group that are currently working on. Taking a look at how much is homework worth in one class versus the next, and can we come to some consensus as we have with our final exams, for example, comprise 20% of the students' grade. And so there's some groundwork already laid, and we're looking to sort of expand that already existing practice. We're looking to develop a rubric to really explain what does good teaching look like at Danbury High School. Now, this is completely separate than our evaluation practice. The teacher evaluation is something separate, but we want to have common language about when we walk into classrooms, we should have an agreement about whether or not what we're seeing is good teaching based on the learning of the students. And so we have a subgroup of folks working on that as well. We're also requiring written lesson plans to be developed, and there was recently a TDEC subcommittee that took a look at what components should appear in any lesson plan, no matter which content area or grade level you're in. And so we're certainly instituting the written lesson plan piece, and we'll follow once that work has come to conclusion to ensure that lesson plan components are also standardized across classrooms. We're really working to increase administrative presence in classrooms, and that's certainly, I think, a culture shift. I know when I was teaching in Bridgeport, and an administrator walked in my room, you hear ooh from the kids, somebody's in trouble, or I'd be a little nervous, am I in trouble? And that's absolutely not our purpose. Our purpose is to support teachers, and in order to support teachers, we have to know where the support is needed. And the only way to do that is to see what's going on in the classroom. And so we're really working to be Buckhorn's resources. When we were planning professional development, if we're not in classrooms, we can't provide what's most appropriate and responsive to the immediate needs of teachers. And so we're really working to change both the amount of time that we spend in classrooms, as well as having a common understanding of what that purpose is. This is certainly not a punitive piece. This is us getting smarter about the learning and teaching going on in our high school. Recently, we've provided teachers with the opportunity to observe their colleagues. Teaching is a very lonely, isolated profession. You close your door, you do your thing, you open your door, you go home. And we know from research, we know from best practice, that collective wisdom is absolutely more powerful than isolation. And so part of the work with the instructional data teams is providing faculty with structured time during their contractual day to be able to meet and work together. And so we're in the beginning stages of that, but they've come an incredibly long way with developing the data teams. We've completed our first common assessment and gone through that process, that data analysis process. So it took a little time in terms of the need to provide teachers with professional development around those areas. But we now have made it an opportunity. If you want to go see your neighbor, whether you're new at this or you've been doing it a long time, you've heard about a teacher that you're interested in learning a new technique, or you've always wondered how it happens in another department, we're working very hard to ensure that teachers have that opportunity to observe practice in their own school. We really have a very concerted effort, both in conjunction with the Outcome Achievement Plan and the TDEP plan, to really focus our professional development. And so we ensured that all faculty have had professional development in the areas of data teams, because we're asking them to do that. Common formative assessments. Formative assessments are simply assessments. They're like pre-tests. You give them before you teach. And that helps you to know what the kids already know, so that way you're better able to teach students as individuals. And then you can differentiate your instruction according to kids' interests and needs. We're really looking at our child study team process. This is really critical as we work to detract the school. The child study team process essentially occurs when a student is exhibiting difficulty. But right now, there are very few guidelines in terms of what constitutes difficulty and who's responsible for making that contact. And so we have a large subcommittee working on really revising that process to ensure that we have a safety net for all of our kids. Because as we work to move forward and raise the bar, we have to be very sure that we have systems in place to help students who are struggling. And so that child study team process is being revised and will be implemented in the fall. I'd like to turn it to my colleague, Gary Boccaccio, to talk a little bit about the credit recovery program, because he's really spearheaded that effort.
Thank you, Megan. Let me echo Bob and Megan's sentiments in saying to the board, thank you for meeting this evening and listening to this presentation. I will tell you that in my, I was going to say many, I'll say few years in Danbury, this is one of the most exciting times I've ever been a part of. It's tremendous to see the collegial work that's being done by our faculty and administration and coming forward with these initiatives. I really think that it's going to make a tremendous difference in the lives of our students, and I'm really, really excited about it. One of the things that we've initiated already is this credit recovery program that started the second semester, which was only a couple of weeks ago. It's a program which gives students an opportunity to restore credit that they have lost, to make up a class that they got an F in. Unfortunately, not everybody learns at the same time, and although the semester ended on June 30th, semester 1, not everybody in Algebra 1 learned all of the standards or learned all of the criteria that they needed to pass that final exam. So this is an opportunity for some of those kids to take this class and learn what it is that they hadn't learned the first semester, and now get their credit restored and get a passing grade. It's meant for students that have put in the seat time. It's not meant for students that have 30 absences. It's meant for those students that were there, working hard, slugging it out every day, and unfortunately they just came up a little bit short. This is an online program. We have 9 topics. We have Algebra 1, Geometry. We have U.S. History and Civics, biology, general science, and English 1 and English 2, and there's probably one that I'm missing. But students sign up for the class. It's offered 3 times a day at this point, and we are at capacity already. We have 25 students in each one of these classes. One period it meets is period 5, it meets again period 8, and it meets after school. So we really have a commitment from students to take this class, especially those that are meeting after school. It's exciting. We're finding the kids are enjoying it and learning from it, and we're hopeful that we can expand the program next year to possibly run all 8 periods of the day. There certainly is a need for this, and it certainly provides students the opportunity that they really deserve it. Bob talked a little bit about the freshman experience that we have at Danbury now and the learning model failures. Many of these courses will address and have many freshmen in it. As I said earlier, it's not about the student who didn't put in the seat time. It really is for the child who worked hard and just fell short. And so in some instances, students will enroll in this class and not only make up one course, but they may make up 2 or possibly even 3. We don't know. There isn't a requirement for seat time. There is a requirement while they're enrolled to attend every day. But once they meet the standards that they need to meet for the course, and once they pass the final exam, there's a final exam in the program, and then we'll also require them to pass our own final exam that will be given in an Algebra 1 class. Once they meet that criteria, then they're given the passing grade and their credits restored. For some youngsters, it may take a month. For other youngsters, it may take 3 months. For those youngsters that take a month, there's an opportunity, if they indeed fail the second course, to now go on and also restore the credit for that particular course. So as I said, it's in its early stages. It's only been running 2 weeks, but the classes are full. Kids seem to be excited about it. Teachers are excited about it. We have 3 teachers running them right now, but we've also already built capacity. We have about a dozen that were trained in a training session that we had a couple of weeks ago, and those were teachers that volunteered. They were interested, they were excited about it, they wanted to learn how it ran, and hopefully if we are able to broaden this next year, we have the teachers ready to go. So that's our program, and as I said, we're looking for some great things out of it.
Sorry for my slow gait here, folks. I parked coming in my gallbladder last week and trying to at least stick to the spirit of our
Too much information.
So we've mentioned a great deal about the detracting work, and I'd just like to underscore that this is what's best for all kids. You know, Bob illustrated what happens when kids are sort of sentenced to that level 2 course of study. There's a tremendous amount of research available in the educational leadership community that indicates that tracking is not a positive practice for students who are either at the upper and lower ends of the achievement echelon. And so what we're looking to do is instead provide all students with a course of study at a bare minimum that will ensure that they're prepared to go to college. There was a lot of discussion at the school data team about the term college preparatory, college prep classes. What about the student who doesn't go to college? Our obligation is to make sure that no matter what a student chooses to do after he or she has graduated from Danbury High School, that they are prepared to be successful in college. I have a brother who attended the technical high schools, and he is now able to go and take some classes on how to manage his own business if he chooses to do so. And again, it's incumbent upon us to ensure that all of our students graduate Danbury High School with the requisite coursework and experience and rigor that's going to ensure that they are not only able to attend college, but to be successful there. We're implementing an open door policy for advanced placement courses for next year. Now, part of this you'll hear about Project Opening Doors, so I won't speak too much about it. But the idea is that currently, if you want to take an AP class in social studies, you have to demonstrate, quote, superior ability in social studies. We don't have a measure for that. And so it becomes almost self-selection. And we want to make sure that all students have access to this high-level type of course and curriculum. In other courses, you have to be the 10%, top 10% of your class to take an English AP class. Well, as a student, I was pretty good in English, not so great in math. By those rules, I wouldn't have been able to excel in the subject that I'm good in because of detriment in another. And so we're looking to open the doors literally for all kids. Now, counseling plays a big part in this, making sure students know what they're up for, making sure that that child study team process that I talked about provides students with interventions when they need them. And we really do believe that we can significantly increase the numbers of students who are taking advanced placement through the partnership with Project Opening Doors, who will bring to us funding for training so that when we can build capacity, ensure that we have enough teachers to accommodate all the students who'd like to take advanced placement classes. So, in the future, and when I say future, I mean beginning, where we've already begun to plan this idea of an intervention system. So part of that has to do with the child study team process. What are the flags, so to speak, that need to trigger for teachers and administrators and guidance counselors that a student is struggling? And how can we provide them with assistance? So how can we look at the resources that we already have in the high school and sort of shift them around to make sure that we have, again, this guaranteed safety net for students who are struggling? As Gary indicated, we'd like to expand the credit recovery program to 8 periods a day as well as after school. The credit recovery program also has some other applications that I find pretty exciting. The idea of an intervention to me is getting extra help in something. And so it's not, out of possibility that a student who's struggling in Algebra 1 may be able to take this credit recovery class, not in lieu of credits, not in lieu of seat time, but as an extra support, a different way of learning the same material, so that way that student can be successful the first time around. And we are also going to require our incoming 8th graders who have not demonstrated proficiency in reading and math to take a reading or math lab. So freshmen have 8 periods a day right now. They need to choose 3 of their electives. Generally one of them is PE. So we have a list of students that we're currently going over with their 8th grade teachers to make sure that we've got the right kids. If you're not successful in reading, you need to take a reading class. And if you're not successful in math, then we need to make sure that we're really front-loading our efforts with students in the beginning, because you have to read in all of your content areas. So we want to make sure that that student doesn't struggle in social studies or science because of a reading deficiency. I'd like to turn it over to Tim Salem, who has really been championing the work of the Freshman Academy, along with Lieutenant Colonel, did I get that right?
Yes.
Brian Holmes, one of our teachers in the audience. So.
Thank you. I'm going to scoot this direction if you don't mind. So I think it's here. I want to thank the board as well for having us here tonight. It's really, really an exciting time. I want to thank most of the members of the data team are actually from the data team that I happen to be working on. So I'm excited that they're here. I want to thank them for being here. It really, really is exciting work that we're doing, and I think I can speak for all of us when I say that the frame of reference that Bob utilizes in our meetings, both individually and in a group, when we frame things with is this best for all kids? As I've said, it's very hard to make bad decisions when you're referencing things in that manner. Is what we're doing best for all kids? So the work that we're doing, I find very exciting, challenging, but exciting. Looking forward to it. I'm here to talk a little about the Freshman Academy. You did see before the baseline data. The data to us very clearly indicates that we need to do something a bit differently than we're currently doing. One of the things that we noticed right away when we were first looking at the data is what are we doing successfully that helps freshmen? And right away what we noticed that putting freshmen in teams does breed success. And so our members, 18 members, looked at that and said, well, that's our number one goal. We want to put our freshmen, all freshmen, in teams, together. On top of being able to put common teachers there, we also looked at placing them in a very similar location. The reason for that is to try to build the connection, make the connections with kids, help in that transitional process, make the school a little bit more friendly by putting them in a place where they have some commonality. That made sense to us. So we're in the midst of looking at that right now, looking at where we can house them, where they can all be together, working with a common group of 4 teachers, an administrator, and there's commonality in their program. Providing a more in-depth transition from 8th grade. It's been wonderful for us right now to be working with the middle schools. Pat's here. I want to thank her publicly as well as Ed Robbs. I've been in a lot of contact recently with both Pat and Ed. I found them to be extremely helpful to me personally in helping us make the transition. We're working very closely with the middle school guidance counselors. We have our guidance staff from both the middle school and the high school at the meeting today. They're working very closely together to do the planning for the freshmen in terms of not only the curricular pieces, but more importantly, the scheduling parts of that. Aside to that, we know that we have a STEM program that's going to be initiated. As a matter of fact, tomorrow night we're having a meeting at the high school from 6 to 7 to go into a little bit more depth on STEM. That's another contingent. We've been working closely with the middle schools on that as well. We did look at, one of the things that you should know is that this was not done, the decisions for this were certainly not done nice. There was a ton of research that really took place, and really thankfully the members of our team for getting Brian and I a lot of that data, a lot of the research that we utilized. It enabled us to make phone calls to places as far away as Michigan, even places close by, to go and visit, to take a look at what are people doing around us and even further away to help the transitional process for freshmen. And it gave us some good data and some good research to look at. So that really helped us. And one of the things that we saw that a lot of schools had in common was a freshman success course. In other words, what kinds of things can we talk about to freshmen to help them in that transition? Well, for us, because we have an advisory program, it makes some of those issues easy to tap right into our advisory. And so one of the things that we're looking to do in the freshman program is make sure that we build our advisory around some of the transitional issues that freshmen sometimes have when they come off and trying to work through those through the advisory. One thing that was extremely important was common planning time. How do we build in common planning time? In our current structure, our teachers do have common planning time for those freshmen who are currently in teams. This would allow our entire program in 9th grade for teachers to have common planning time. And I cannot emphasize enough how important that is, not only from a curricular aspect, but also from an intervention standpoint. When teachers can talk about not only curriculum-wise what things they should be working on, but also all four of us have this particular student. What things are you seeing? What am I seeing? And what ways can we appropriately make some interventions for this student? Or how can we recommend this to the administrator or guidance counselor? That's a vitally important piece of this, and certainly one that was a part of the thought process when we put this together. So I can't emphasize that enough. We're really looking forward to that part of it. One thing I do want to mention, we also look very, very closely at our scheduling. How are we scheduling? And how does the schedule affect students? And we looked at a number of different schedules. Again, some close by, some in different places across the country. And what we saw in the data, in the research, was that concentrated time in the core subject areas allows students to breed success. And so we looked at, well, what ways could we possibly try to bring some of that into our program. And so what we've decided to do is pilot a block schedule for a part of our freshman program for next year. So next year, we're going to have 3 teams that are going to be piloting what we're going to reference as an AB block schedule, which will give students concentrated time in core subject areas. More importantly, it will allow teachers to plan critically across the curriculum to tie in some important themes. It will give them more time to plan. It will certainly give them more time to talk about intervention strategies. So we're going to use that as a pilot. It'll give us a chance to really use those teachers as a barometer, and they'll give us good concrete feedback, and we'll look at the data and we'll see if this is something that we want to look at for the future. And as I talked about, the teaming with the middle school staff has really been a wonderful experience for us, and we're hoping to really build that bridge and continue that for next year. And this is just, I know Megan talked a bit about the sequence for freshmen. This just gives you an understanding of the courses. Really not that much vastly different. We're streamlining some of the courses that freshmen will be taking. The key really is the bottom, the last bullet there. Students who are really finding difficulty in reading and math will have a supplemental course to help bolster them, and we'll be providing extra support in those particular areas. So again, overall, I can't say it's really exciting. I'm thrilled with the prospects for next year. Looking forward to it. Over the course of the next couple of weeks, We're going to have opportunities to engage the public tomorrow. As I talked, we'll be talking about STEM. The following week, we'll be talking about the ninth grade program, weather permitting. I understand there's going to be a storm on the way. So I'm excited about it, and I'm going to be turning it back over now to Dr. Rossi.
As you can see, we've thrown a lot of information your way about data, a lot of initiatives. Sarah, Bill, I'll kind of defer to you guys and just see how you want to look at this. I guess what I do, just want to leave you with is this thought that part of your work is obviously you've taken copious notes and you have questions, but part of the work is to really look at the graduation requirements. You know, presently, we require our kids to take 105 credits, one of the lowest in the state. So if we're going to talk about high expectations and leveling up, then it starts with just what are we going to ask you to do before we give you the diploma in June. And the 7th graders that are in our school system that at their school right now, if we don't do something very differently to our graduation requirements by the time they go into effect in 2015, they will not be college ready. So I guess I put the onus on you and say, let's do something, and in this redesign, let's do something ASAP. So the state of Connecticut is saying this, and you can see that is very different. I think there was a second handout. I don't know if you guys have that second handout that has more of a table to it. There's one caveat you have. You can see that is very different than what we presently have at the end. Mike has it. Thank you, Mike. We're going to ask, and we've done a lot of this work for you, but we're going to ask that some people that want to get involved in this really look at what it is we're asking for the students at Danbury to leave with in the way of coursework. Now, when I say huge shift, if you look at just the math requirement, the state of Connecticut is saying by the year 2015, our present 7th graders, through Algebra 2, now remember what I told you, but I do tracking errors are going to solve some of these problems automatically. Presently, the kids that we graduate in June, some of them are going to walk across our stage and not have taken high school algebra. Next year, with pre-algebra as the lowest course we offer, that won't be true in the future, but that will be true in June. So, there's a lot here to think about and a lot here to digest. We put the Danbury graduation requirements and the state of Connecticut proposal, and we're going to add, and we made some recommendations to you that look like this. First of all, the major recommendation is that, and don't get caught up in the numbering system, we're going to ask that we look at how we number credits, more in line with other secondary schools in our country. But that number 25 really correlates to 125 in our present numbering system. So we're going to ask from you that we increase the graduation requirements at our school to 25, and presently they are 20.5. Okay. To include a prescribed English curriculum, math curriculum, science curriculum, and social studies curriculum. To include a service learning project. 1 year of world languages. 4 semesters of career and life skills, and 9 semesters of student choice electives. Like I said, it's a tremendous amount to digest in one sitting, but it's a drastic change in what students can leave our school with now. Sal, Bill, did you want to comment on any of this stuff?
Well, I think you can, For the board's information, the Race to the Top that we applied for, you know, that the work that Dr. Ross is speaking about is encumbered within that, within those activities that we're going to do anyway. As you recall, I said to you, if we get money for doing this, then that's just, you know, just an added benefit. We need to do this work anyway. So what you see here in terms of graduation requirements is by board policy, we would make a recommendation to the board policy group, to Mr. Taverside, and then come back to the general board for implementation. But I think we need to look at that in terms of the activities that we're thinking about doing, even if we were to move forward into a different kind of scheduling pattern, whether that be a 4x4 or otherwise. So youngsters have the full access to all the coursework. And I think this is exciting work, but this needs to go with it, along with the weighting of the courses that we started last year as youngsters go through the curriculum. So this is something that we'll need to take on anyway, based on the Race to the Top and based on the state requirement that we need to match by, was it 2015? Something we have to do anyway, so it works well with what we're doing. Other than that, Bill, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
There are a number of key initiatives that were brought up tonight. First and foremost, the board gave us a charge in central administration. We had 6 high school principals in 10 years, which is not a good track record. And the idea of stability, research is just so definitive on the idea of state leadership. So we're delighted with the results that have come in such a short period of time. In Bob's work, as we hoped he had came immediately with his sprint belt and moved on from there. Megan has been a wonderful addition to our leadership team. We saw the work with data teams and stuff that she imported from the state, kind of ready to TDEC. The leadership that's coming out of the team over here has been exemplary and just absolutely wonderful. And each of the folks has taken on a key initiative or two to help drive this. So really it's a cohesive machine. Finally, we've gotten traction on what we're going to get. I was listening to Eileen a little while ago talking about some of the statistics. And if you recall, back in the fall, we came before the board and we said our 3rd grade scores went up, our 4th grade scores went up, our 5th grade scores went up, our 6th grade scores went up, our 7th grade scores went up, and our 8th grade scores went up, and they went up in every area tested. So every grade level, every area. High school is now our next level of work. And you can see why so much emphasis is being placed there. And I think the outward term to lead with tonight is increased rigor, and it's being driven by a change in adult behavior. Not in any way meant to be pejorative, but so often, and I can say this coming from a secondary background most of my career, there's a saying that was taught to us. Sal and I went to a conference with Michael Fullen, one of the best-known educators in the world at the university level, said, I can put it in 3 simple terms for you. Elementary teachers love their kids. Secondary teachers love their content. University teachers, of which I'm one, love themselves. And he really nailed it. So at the high school level, the middle school level as well, frequently it's about my content and my need to get it across, as opposed to us looking at the kids and turning the entire dynamic around. So this evening, I think what we're all taking away from this is that this is a massive undertaking designed to turn the equation around and make it back to the planning model. What's in the best interest of the child, and how do we retrofit a very complex, when Bob was organization, a few thousand member small city that's known as the neighborhood high school. So how do we retrofit that? The other piece that we were missing saying, some of the folks are here, Attila and Phyllis, the department head structure that we put in is paying dividends as well. With the amount of leadership that we're getting. Yes, we saved about $100,000 by changing the leadership structure, but we've gotten so much mileage out of it. It's just unbelievable. Kara Casimiro is over there as well, and Kara has done the overwork. So we're absolutely thrilled. This is a good, it's a night to celebrate for Danbury, all the good work that's come forward on behalf of all you folks, really pushing very hard. And Brian Holmes, the last, I'd be very remiss when they say this. Brian came in, retired from the Air Force, and walked into my office one day and he said, what do I have to do to be able to teach an aerospace course. I said, Brian, you're not a certified teacher. We just can't let you do that. And then Link and I said, well, we're going to have to become a certified teacher. So that's a huge undertaking. 2 years later, Brian came back certified as a science teacher. And not too long ago, came and said, well, I have to become an administrator. And this time I went and said, well, here's the process. And Brian is now involved in that program as well. That's the kind of leadership that's coming out of Danbury High School now. So our kids are in good hands, very good, capable hands. And I'm sure I speak for Sal, so thank you very much for the leadership.
I guess we can open this up to questions, but I'm just wondering, did you talk around the first thing yesterday was undergoing complete psychiatric exam?
Okay, we want our students to
Is the mic on, Bob? I can't. You gotta turn it on. They've been turned off, I believe.
I usually don't need one.
Oh, there
Okay,
you go.
we want our students prepared to be successful in college. So are we going to move in the direction of an exit exam for the high school and grant a diploma to those who pass the exit exam? I assume there's some kind of final judgment that must be met. I mean, how are you going to evaluate whether they have the standards? And then the other thing I asked, should we, if this is true, should we do the same thing at the middle school level? I mean, if we have students coming in and the freshman class seems to have problems in mathematics and reading and so forth. I mean, and they obviously have gotten through the 8th grades. I mean, I'm not saying I don't know what to do. I'll be honest with you. But the thing is, what I'm seeing here is that maybe some of these things have to be done at the 8th grade. Try to catch the remedial things so we're not getting them in the 9th grade. Okay, what are we going to do now? How are we going to certify that student at the end of 12th grade is now going to be successful in college if that's what our is?
Do you want to talk in terms of curriculum writing that's going to go on?
Well, Bob, that's why I think the board has a policy in terms of the graduation we need to talk about. That's a discussion we need to have. The research out there in high state testing for high school is not advisable. The integrity of passing courses and doing performance exams really speaks to the quality of the work the youngsters are doing if the rigor is there and they're held accountable. So that's a conversation we need to have. On target with the middle school, we worked for 2 years with Pat and with Mr. Robbs in terms of looking at what we do with the middle school. You could see the results of the middle school. That's exactly what you're seeing. Now, we do have a little dynamic here in Danbury. It's a little different. 40% of our kids that take the CMTs are not the same kids that necessarily take the CAP. So you put all your work at that middle school, it's kind of questionable. So we need to take a long view. And Pat and Ed are looking at that. They've been reorganizing last year, notably the Rice Park that named its AYP. Not that that's the high stand, it's a very low stand. We want to stretch beyond there. So we're doing things there in order to support the kind of work that we need to do at the high school. But that's a conversation when we come to the board policy regarding what kind of performance expectations we want when we give that diploma. Right now, everybody's getting a diploma. And there are performance reviews that I see in here that, I don't know what they mean. So we really need to look at it. So that's something we'll be doing down the road in terms of that. Now, you work with the state and with other high schools, so...
Sure. Part of what's on your chart was also part of the slide. There's two columns really to take a look at. One is CSU requirements. That's our Central State University System. That's our 2015 deadline, which is those are our current 7th graders, and making sure that what we require of them is going to at least get them into any university that they choose to attend. Particularly the one that we're working so hard to build relationships with. The next column is the CSDE secondary reform proposal. This is a separate effort that was really undertaken by Commissioner McClellan when he first came to Connecticut from Massachusetts, and he really looked at requiring the CAP as an exit exam. And a lot of work, a lot of committee work across the state went on through that, and they opted not to have that as part of the proposal. And so, as Dr. Pasquarello indicated, there's a lot of research that shows that that kind of assessment isn't necessarily good for all kids. We really believe that with the work that's being done at the middle school level and providing real-time interventions for students, concurrent with ensuring that the course curriculum that we're offering is rigorous, will help us to make sure that these students are ready. So we think that by attacking it at two fronts, one at the policy level, and then also in terms of real-time, what are we doing with the students who are sitting in our classrooms right now to make sure that they can be successful? But the superintendent indicated that's certainly part of the larger discussion that I suspect will ensue.
Did you have a question?
Dr. Russell, I'm sorry. It really wasn't a question. Being the new one on the block, I don't know your staff. You can just a quick introduction of them? Don't want to take time out from everybody else, but...
I'm Megan Martins. I'm the Associate Principal of Instruction for Secondary Schools.
Tim Sam, Assistant Principal at the high school, level 1.
Jessie Belanger, Assistant Principal, Level 2.
Mike Clark, Assistant Principal, Level 4. Good evening, Gary Boccaccio, Level 3, Assistant Principal.
I've got some folks back here also.
Yep. Josiah Hills, Science Department Head.
Don Pereira, ESL and World Language Department Head. Lisa Hardiff, Math Teacher.
I'm Brian Holmes, the Air Force Junior ROTC Instructor.
I think Dr. Partoli just was here just a second ago. She must have just run to the hallway somewhere.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Rachel, you had a question?
Now you said advisory was done this year.
I believe it's the accountability. I believe Rachel is a little different. I think that they talk a lot about that guaranteed curriculum. We now have a guaranteed advisory curriculum, so we have 5 different folks that are writing curriculum, and we spend one professional development training every month actually talking about the advisory curriculum and talking about the kids in the advisory classes. And so all of the freshman kids are exposed to the same curriculum. All of the sophomore kids are. I have a junior advisory class. I attend the junior advisory training once a month. I don't conduct it. I attend it. A little awkward for some people, but I'm there as an attendee. So it is the same as the common curriculum, and I think there's a different point of focus for all of our advisory teachers because we're talking about it more.
And my other question is, in moving in this direction, do you think we're going to widen the gap? I know in the beginning it's going to be hard, but how do you kind of get around, or how do you plan to do to keep the gap closer and not widen it and require more?
Well, now the gap has been widened because of a very randomized curriculum, and I've had teachers and guidance counselors tell me level 2 courses are harder than level 4 and 5 courses, and I'm saying, okay, help me understand that. I'm trying to understand what we're doing at Danbury, and they said to me, well, it depends on the teacher. Well, it can't depend on the teacher. It has to depend on the curriculum. And I should be able to walk down the hall of the math curriculum, and if we're walking by algebra classes, they should be within a couple of days of each other in an Algebra 1 course. So this randomizing effect will no longer happen at Danbury High School. There will be a common viable curriculum for what we call Algebra 1, and there will be a different expectation for a curriculum we call honors algebra. And in doing so, this leveling up concept, remember, everybody rises to high expectations, not low expectations. You will get increased rigor, more kids in our advanced placement classes. I experienced this shift firsthand at my former high school, which you visited. 38% of the kids there were exposed to advanced placement classes. And the kids at Danbury have many more opportunities than the kids in my school, my old school in Goodyear, Arizona. So I believe, committed to the belief that this will shorten the gap.
Congratulations. Still there?
I just want to thank you and your team. I happen to know that educators that you have behind you, or certainly with you and your school together. But we talk about excellent educators. How do we recruit excellence? And what is the criteria we're going to use to sift through those applicants? And the evaluation process, how can we improve that? And what can we do to support that change? Because that's really so valuable. And the guaranteed curriculum, how will that be monitored? How do we do that? And the other thing I have is about the curriculum instruction and assessment, the teaching. You know, do we have the confidence that whoever is in that classroom recognizes good teaching?
Wow. My favorite author is a guy by the name of Todd Whitaker, and he says that there's only two ways to improve schools: hire great teachers, and improve the ones that you have. Well, we're not in this design model that Denver's going to hire 200 new teachers. We all know that. So it's our job, and I think Megan alluded to the fact that jobs of assistant principals are going to change. They have changed. We have to improve the ones we have. And it starts with all of the educators, all the adults in this room, shifting their focus so everybody becomes an instructional leader. And then when a teacher has a problem in a math class, Gary Boccaccio is the assistant principal that's championing that department. And that we are all accountable. And if a student fails, I think we had an uncomfortable moment the other day with Tim and I talking in the room, and he said something about the freshman academy, and, you know, what are we going to do if this doesn't work? And I said, no, Tim, I'm going to look at you and ask you, why isn't this working? That the accountability starts with all of us, that we take a personal accountability, that we say we're going to do this is important, this is the work that has to be done, that we hold ourselves accountable. And that's why I started this meeting by saying the fact that you would give us time to present to you this redesign really means a lot to me. It's the reason why I'm here in Denver, because education is so important. And I think, as Bill alluded to, the high school in some respects has been neglected for a long period of time. And we have to catch up, and we've got a lot of work to do.
Also, I think the research with the Breaking Brain stuff, you're familiar with that. We talked about that when we were looking at the middle school and in terms of the high school. Replicating, because we're kind of around the curve on this thing, so we're taking advantage of what's out there in terms of good practice that we can build on. I think that will help us. I'm also impressed with the people that we have recruited. And, you know, I walk through that high school quite a bit and the elementary, and I see some wonderful teaching going on. I'm seeing more explicit teaching going on, where time is spent about what is it that we're learning today, youngsters, and what are we going to do, and how do I expect that, what expectations I have, so that I know that you do understand what it is I'm teaching. They're beginning to talk the language that is important, not only to communicate to youngsters that this is my content, but what do I need to know that you know it. And the administrators there, one of the things that we're looking at is this, we call it the instructional rounds. Did I get that right that time?
Learning rounds.
Learning rounds, we call them now. But much like the medical, where there'll be some criteria, and an administrator's job should be spent in the classroom, not in the office. And that will speak to young administrators getting out, not just the high school, but the middle and elementary, going around their buildings and looking at what is going on in the classroom, and then using that as a professional community to talk about the practice. And are they getting what they're expecting? If not, what do we do differently? I think if you remember Cambridge, it talked about not the kids so much doing something different, but the adults doing something different. If they're not getting it, more homework will get it done. I don't think so by itself. What can we do differently? And that all builds, there's different, it's kind of like a triangulation. All these things need to come together in a grand plan. There's no guarantees. I think the stats that you looked at, my expectation would be, if we implement these things, failure rates going down, is the rigor still there for all kids as we integrate youngsters and have access? I think those are things we need to look at in terms of successes that are academic successes. And then we want to look at the number of students that are not dropping out. The youngsters, how many students are increasing their going to college and maintaining more than 1 year. Getting in is one thing, staying there is another thing. Okay, we need that kind of longevity. So those are the components I think we need to look at to determine, Bob, if what we're doing is good, other than an exam saying, you know, you are making a difference. And then are we getting the kind of people who can deliver the curriculum we expect them to? And then having people holding on account.
I'd just like to add